Welcome to the Avail podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra. I'm the lead pastor of Vertical Church, aka Iglesia Vertical, in South Florida, and I'm your host for the Avail podcast. Today, we're sitting down with Laurel Ordonez. Laurel is a business growth strategist and entrepreneur with a background in hospitality, business development, and digital marketing. She's the CEO of Queenly Consulting, and today we're going to discuss the power of pivoting as a business leader. So lean in, leaders, and let's get started. Laurel, I am excited to get into this conversation with you today. I think it's going to be intriguing. I think it's going to shed some light for so many leaders, definitely marketplace leaders. I even think ministry leaders are going to be able to lean in and catch some wisdom here. How does it feel to be on the Avail podcast?
Oh man, this is a dream. It's an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited. And I really want to jump into the conversation, but it always helps our Avail audience when they get to know our guest a little bit. So since it's your first time, Laurel, on the Avail podcast, can you share a little bit about yourself, where you're from, the journey that's brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. And so who I am today, right? I am a multi six-figure full service marketing agency owner. I'm the host of the Boss Too Hard podcast. And my most recent endeavor is my course for entrepreneurs, the Business Growth Bootcamp. On the personal side, I am a wife to a U.S. Army soldier, and I have three incredible boys, 17, 16, and 10. So I've got my hands full. What makes the journey interesting is that I can say all of these accolades now, but the reality is that I was a 17-year-old dropout, right? I got pregnant at 17. I had my son at 18. But even though I went on a journey, God was always there, and God has continued to show up in so many incredible ways. And so I love what God has done with my story, with the dreams that He had hidden in my heart, and how they've all come to fruition today, and how they're still coming to fruition.
I love, what you're saying is very true. I get to talk to a lot of leaders here on the Avail podcast, and even as a pastor, a lot of people, and everyone's story is just so special. And I think when you come to understand God has a purpose for your life, no matter what your past is, no matter what the challenges or even mistakes of the past, or difficulties, God has a way of redeeming. And I think you're a great example of that, Laurel, of how the Lord is using you today, based on your willingness at some point to say, God, I need you. I need you in my life. And I think that even connects with the heart of what we're going to talk about today. Before we kind of jump into the conversation, kind of leadership conversation, tell us a little bit about kind of Queenly Consulting. You're the founder of Queenly Consulting. Tell us a little bit about what you do specifically as you lead Queenly Consulting, and what kind of services you offer.
So Queenly Consulting is, like I said, full service marketing agency, but we kind of take things a little bit further because marketing is so much more than pretty posts and flyers, right? It's about true growth and being able to see a return on investment while keeping your clients, your team members at the heart of everything. And so at a very high level, I serve organizations through fractional leadership. And so that's fractional marketing leadership. And I go in and I either activate my team to get your, marketing department on track, delivering results, removing that wall between sales and marketing to develop what is your one voice approach, which is something that we use within our company. And then on kind of middle level, we work with small businesses to develop tactical marketing strategies. So those are your social media strategies, your LinkedIn strategies, website development, community-driven business development. People don't realize the power of their own communities. And then my heart is my entrepreneurs. And so I developed the Business Growth Bootcamp to take people through the 14 steps of really building a foundation of what it looks like to build a business from the ground up. And that I really want people, I think people quit because they can't figure out a way to pay themselves a salary. Like, how do I pay my bills? Right. And so my goal is to help those entrepreneurs who are needing to develop a plan to where they can sustain their business, pay themselves a livable wage, and kind of get to the point where they can start to outsource and build a team so that the business isn't just heavy on their shoulders.
Yeah, that's good. I think that is a burden that any leader struggles, especially as an entrepreneur or as a founder, if you will, of something that you're
Yeah.
building. That's huge. I know in reading a little bit about you and even in conversation with you that you have a passion for encouraging leaders to, I guess, to always be open and receptive, specifically to growth and to evolving and adapting, and changing. Even this word of pivoting. Could you share a little bit more about even your own journey, and maybe even the challenges you faced along the way regarding being open to growth, constantly evolving and adapting as you go?
Yeah, it goes pretty far back. I don't think there was ever a position or a task that I was asked to do that I said no, or I said that wasn't my job.
Hmm.
I always looked at every opportunity that came my way as what can I learn from this? And I spent a lot of years learning, but my foundation is hospitality. And so going to school for hospitality, I always have seen the opportunity to create an experience. And then no matter what business you're in, creating the experiences is what continues to move you forward.
Mm.
And so I worked in a call center at Chase, and I did my best there, and I was able to coach other people on the phone and help them up level and get
Mm.
their scores up. And then I went into technology sales, right? And I was doing wholesale distribution of iPhones and electronics across the world. But through that, I learned how to work with different cultures, and tech is a whole nother language, right?
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to grow, and I knew even though I was called a relationship manager, really what I was doing was business development.
Mm.
And so I asked myself when I was could really feel that God was calling me out. I think there's times when God, you need to make a move,
Yeah.
right? And you can either make the move on God's timing where it's going to be he's going to provide some grace, he's going to open the right doors, or you can fight it, and then God makes the situation so uncomfortable you have no choice but to move, right? And so I made the choice to move. I followed God's call, and I took a position in event marketing, right? I'd never done event marketing, but I knew business, I knew sales, and I knew people. So I
Hmm.
was like, I can do this.
Hmm.
And so I took that skill set and I applied it, and that's where I really grew. I grew in the company to a VP of business development for an experiential marketing firm. Now, here's the power of the pivot, what we're talking about. I was working in the events industry in 2020 when the pandemic hit.
Wow.
We all know that events like went out the
Yep.
window. Like we weren't hanging out, we weren't doing anything. And so in this situation, we really had to think what where are opportunities to continue to drive revenue and growth without being event based.
Wow.
And so this is one of those situations where I really had to think about it. And I went to the founder of the company, that's who I reported to. I was like, hey, I, I never went to big events anyways. And so when I'm thinking about an experience, something that I want to do, I want to go to a cool new restaurant. I want to check out something different with my friends, something that can take my kids to. I don't necessarily want to go to a festival or a concert. And so we completely shifted our strategy to where instead of highlighting large events and ticket sales and things like that, we were focusing on creating experiences in our communities with our small businesses, with our local businesses. And we 3x'd our revenue in the middle of a global pandemic
Wow.
by simply being able to take the information and the skill set and the tactics that we knew worked and just apply them to a different audience. And it was absolutely game changing. And to this day, I'm no longer with the company, but they're still using that model and they are absolutely thriving. And it showcases like those hidden gems and what's beautiful in our local
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah, it's funny that that example that you give is so pertinent, I think, to everybody who was leading at the time. Because even as a pastor in church, there's a lot of ministry leaders that lean in here in Avail. Even as a church, we had to rethink, how are we going to be the church when people can't come to the building anymore for services, and what took a lot longer than maybe we all expected initially. And I think that's a great perspective that you bring, of sometimes, even though it may be uncomfortable, shifting, changing, adapting to the reality of these situations can end up being actually a good thing. It can end up opening the door to growth. Why do you think, because that's obviously a good example, a good story, right? Why do you
Yeah.
think leaders often find it challenging to pivot or even adapt, even as the world around them is changing? But sometimes there is resistance to that.
So I think we can all agree that change is really scary. I don't care how adaptable you are, change is scary. And there's a lot of reason why change is scary. Number one, most of us are creatures of habits. In order to do something differently, we've got to get out of the uncomfortable, and we've got to build new habits that align with the person, thing, opportunity that we're trying to create. We internally have to change. Then number two, most leaders have a team or people that they're leading, right? Whether you're getting paid to lead them, they're part of a community group, they're part of your church, whatever that may look like. We ourselves are resistant to change, but the people we lead are resistant to change too. And so the amount of buy-in that a leader needs to receive in order to feel comfortable making that change is often not even achievable. And so I feel leaders are often worried about what stakeholders will think, what the outcome will people be receptive to the change? What if the outcome isn't what they had expected? What if I fail?
Yep.
And so I think all of that tied together makes it a whole lot easier to stay where we are than facing the big, giant, hairy, mean, scary things that are out there that come with change. But the reality is when we stay where we are, like nothing great ever comes from a place of comfortability, right? We've got to challenge ourselves, and the biggest thing is we've got to trust God. There are some times where it doesn't make sense, but there's an burning call inside of us to do something different. And sometimes we simply just have to listen to that
Yeah.
and not worry about what anybody else says.
Yeah, that's good. I can imagine, even as you were sharing about your journey, Laurel, I can imagine, even from early on, being a very young mother, and going through that journey of thinking, how can I do anything else? And then the door opens, a scholarship becomes available.
Yeah.
You know, some blessings from God in ways that you wouldn't have imagined come, and you were able to make some intentional pivots, maybe not even knowing where it was going to lead, but how do you, as a consultant, because I'm sure that as you have your clients and
Yeah.
you deal with leaders, how do you help leaders overcome fear? For example, fear of change, fear of growth. Like, what is your approach to help people overcome that challenge, or even that hesitation?
So we have to realize that fear is an emotion. Emotions are true in the moment, right? We can say we honestly feel this, but emotions are fickle and they change very quickly. And so when I'm working with a leader, there are three ways that we need to look at decision making. So there is emotion-based decision making, where that fear comes in and it leads our decision making process. There is gut, right? Sometimes you just got that gut feeling that you've got to trust. And if you're a believer, a lot of times it's that Holy Spirit driven download. It's like, this is crazy, but I know God's calling me to do it. I felt that when I heard God ask me, if I call you, will you come? That was the worst open-ended question that I've ever received. The Holy Spirit will do that
Yeah,
to
yeah,
you, right?
yeah.
And then the third way that you make a decision is through data. And so we go through the process. And so first, let's walk through the emotions. If you weren't feeling this emotion, how would you be making this decision? How would this situation be impacting you, right? So let's address the emotion. or the emotion. Then number two, let's look at the data. So I really know that, for example, I love my boot camp, love the business growth boot camp. Right now, it's not a huge driver of revenue for us. It's still new. We're still working on marketing it. And when I look at the numbers, what I spent on marketing versus what I received in revenue, I broke even. And I'm like, I have to ask myself, looking at the numbers and what the cost per acquisition of new member into the boot camp was. Number one, if nothing changed, is it something that my business could sustain? I have to answer yes or no to that. And then number two, forecasting using, the different numbers that we have in our businesses, forecasting and looking at, okay, if we invested this is the expected outcome. And this outcome is really good. And if it doesn't work out, this is the outcome. And if that outcome is negative, where would I take us? So using numbers to really drive decisions. And then when we've addressed the emotion and we've addressed the data, it's like, okay, now what is your gut saying? And a lot of times when you address everything, you realize that your gut was leading you in the right direction and that the rest of your body and mind just needed to be aligned in order to make that decision. But the reality is sometimes as entrepreneurs, we get these wild, crazy ideas and the data doesn't make sense and the emotions, we're nervous, we're not sure, and we got to go with our gut. But that's when trusting God comes in and just knowing that, hey, it's been confirmed. I've been praying. I've talked to wise counsel, and this is the direction that I'm going to go.
Yeah, that's good. So, for example, we can sometimes talk about as leaders being in tune externally with the factors around them. I think you mentioned as we were preparing for this podcast about being in tune internally. I think you're alluding to that here in what you're sharing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
There is this concept of, I do believe that body, spirit, and mind are very, very in line. And so there is this concept, this feeling that I've been really conscious about in my business and in my life. And it's the concept of a full body yes.
Okay.
You talk to people and sometimes they're saying yes, but then they're shaking their head. No, you're not in alignment. There's something that's off there. And so we often will look to our teams and external resources and, that wise counsel, our boards, our advisory boards, to get feedback on decisions, right? Because as humans, we want the buy-in of our community, and it doesn't feel good to fail by yourself. Most of us, we want to be able to throw it off and say, oh, well, the board thought it was a good idea too, But as entrepreneurs, we often are ignoring our internal response to what's happening externally. And there's something based on our personal experience, what we've been hearing from God in our quiet time, what we've been reading, what we've been interpreting through prayer and scripture. There's often decisions made that are not fully aligned with who you are and your calling. And so it's important as leaders that we take external factors into consideration. But when a decision you make is in line with who you are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, it's a full body yes, where it's just like you make that decision on a firm foundation. And I wish there was a better way to explain it, but it's kind of that concept that when you know, and you know it in your core. And as leaders, we cannot ignore the we know it in our core feeling that we often get.
I love that. I think that's something that is, some people might say, Laurel, that's easier said than done. And I think, on the side of your relationship with God, I think that's something that the more you trust in him and the more in decision making and all of that, the more you're going to see this muscle develop. But there's something so interesting in that whole concept of just a full body yes, a full body
Yeah.
yes. Shifting gears a little bit in the conversation, you have an article in the winter
Yeah.
2024 issue of the Avail Journal, and it's an article entitled "Step Out, Don't Wait to Be Qualified to Answer the Call." Can you share with us the heart behind this article?
Yeah. Am I allowed to cry?
Please, please do.
So, I have invested a lot in personal development. And a lot of times I have that personality that gets ready to get ready. And so a lot of times, I mean, we hear it in all aspects of our life, right? Like you wait to do big things because you're not quite ready to do them. But the article, what it really drives home is so many of us don't realize that our purpose is the same. We're all called to serve one another. How we do it is our calling. If you are pursuing your calling, a lot of your life experiences and what you have walked through to get to this point have already equipped you and prepared you for what you need to do. And so a lot of us we discount the vision that we have for our life and the importance of the vision. And the vision is, what is the end goal? Personally, professionally, spiritually, relationally, there's an end goal. And knowing that you start with the end in mind. Because if you don't have the end in mind,
Mm-hmm.
as entrepreneurs, we will chase shiny things all day
Yep.
long, right? And then it's the mission, like knowing the goals. So when we think about war and all of that, right? They say you got to win the battle before you win the war.
Mm-hmm.
So the war is the vision, the battle are your goals, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the goals that you set
Mm-hmm.
to get through each step to what it is that you're creating. And the third is messaging, right? We really we get into business and all of a sudden conversations and communication get really difficult. We think about the perfect landing pages. And now in a world of social media, what's the perfect hook and what's going to catch people, you know? But what we don't realize is that we walk through our entire lives crafting messages to get people to convert into lovers and friends and business partners. We do it all day long. And so often the things that we do in life have prepared us for the call God has put on our lives way before we even know it.
Come on.
But we are often second guessing ourselves because of a formality or because someone else has this credential or that credential, but that someone isn't you, and your story is so much more valuable than you're giving it credit for. And so that's really the heart of that article. And just really breaking out of that comparison mindset. It's not what everyone else is doing, it's what you're doing. And I promise you, you're more ready than you think.
Somebody needs to hear that today. Somebody, you need to hear just that phrase. You're more ready than you think. Laurel, as you were sharing that, I just had a thought. I think there's a reality in life where we feel the tension, right? So I think you're kind of pushing us towards this side of the tension of, hey, you're more ready than you think. How do you balance that tension, especially when maybe somebody might feel like I'm not sure, and I think maybe there may have been stories out there of people maybe they weren't ready or they needed some more experience along the journey. How do you manage that tension between I don't have all the experience yet that somebody maybe who's been doing this for 5 years or 7 years or 10 years does, but then at the same time I don't have to wait till I'm an expert to take the first step. I think there's a tension there, and I think that it's challenging to manage that. And I think maybe some people might be like you were some years ago. Hey, I'm in a job, I'm doing great, and I'm doing good things, I'm helping, but I think there might be something more that I'm called to. Ooh, how do you take that jump?
So, I have an amazing business coach. He actually calls himself a business counselor, and he's someone that I go to for wise counsel all the time. And one of we were having a conversation, and I said, "What if this doesn't work out?" He's like, "What do you mean? What if this doesn't work?" He's work out. He's like, what if? Answer the question. And so often we get our wheels turning on what if I fail? What if this doesn't work out? What if I take out this business loan and I can't pay it back, right? So often we're leaving the what if question unanswered. And that's what's the scary part. As an entrepreneur, if you leave your job and you start a business, what if I fail? Well, what if you do fail? You get another job. You've had a job before. You've applied for jobs before. What if I am trying these different things and what if I fall into debt? You know what? It happens. Communicate. There are plans to get out of debt. We have to stop leaving the what if questions unanswered and really think about, okay, if I step out in faith or if I do the scary thing or if I make the change and it doesn't work out, what's the plan? And so that is my advice, is stop leaving the what if questions unanswered, because if you answer them, things are a lot less scary.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's some wise advice, everybody, from Laurel Ordonez. Laurel, you mentioned about a course that you're really excited about, which is the Business Growth Bootcamp. Can you share with us a little bit about what does that consist of? And then also, how can people check it out? How can they register? How can they lean in and find out more about it?
Yeah, so I'm going to use doctors as an example, right? So when you're sick, you go usually to your primary care first, right? And they do the blood test, they check your physiological foundation, and then from there you go to a specialist, right? Oh, ear, nose, and throat, foot doctor, whatever it may be. So the Business Growth Bootcamp is a really amazing business generalist course. It is setting the foundations of your business. We go over vision, mission, messaging, how to build your avatar, what it looks like to capture data, the importance of a CRM. We go over sales tactics, a little bit of personality work using the DISC assessment. We talk about outsourcing. There's 14 modules that you go through, and it builds your foundation, and it allows you to see cracks in your foundation or where your business may not be as healthy before you go and spend thousands of dollars on a sales course when sales is not your issue. You convert like crazy. You need better marketing. Or you're not selling to anyone because you don't know who you're selling to. You don't have an avatar. And when you're selling to everyone, you're selling to no one. So it helps us really look at where your business is unhealthy, fix the foundation. So then from there, you can either operate off of that foundation or realize that you need additional help somewhere else. But the cool thing is that we've got a community group, and I go live every single week personally to answer your questions and provide feedback and help you along the way. It's been really, really beautiful. And so super easy. It's businessgrowthbootcamp.com. And the digital course is usually $497. However, because I'm honored to be here, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I love what Avail is doing. With code AVAIL, it's actually $400 off that course price. So you can enroll lifetime access for $97.
Come on. That is a big deal right there, everybody. I'm going to remind everybody it's businessgrowthbootcamp.com. Normally, this program would be $497, but if you put promo code AVAIL, it will be how much, Laurel?
$97.
What?
Yeah.
This is a big deal. Hey, tell a friend about AVAIL and tell them about this deal. It's going to help you on your journey. And you know, I love opportunities like these where people can kind of take a journey. It sounds like this is a journey. It's got 14 modules. Helps you kind of understand where you are, fix or strengthen the foundation, and then really get into a place where you're able to operate with excellence and with consistency and really growing your
clarity
business and clarity. I love this. How else, if people are leaning in, Laurel, and they want to know more about you or even about Queenly Consulting, where else can they go and connect with you?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more from me, hear more of my story, I am host of the Boss Too Hard podcast. So you can go to bosstoohard.com. That's the easiest way. And then it'll link you to all of your favorite streaming channels. And then if you're interested in working with me or potentially having a consultation, I'm a huge believer in the free consultation. We've got to give an opportunity to know each other before we can do business together. And so that's queenlyconsulting.co, not .com. That wasn't available. So we're .co.
Very good, very good. So, bosstoohard.com for more on the podcast, where you can lean in and listen
Yes.
to Laurel and her podcast. And then the website for the company is queenlyconsulting.co. Do you do social media, Laurel, or anything like that?
Yeah. So queenlyconsulting.co across all channels, you'll find us. And Laurel Ordonez on LinkedIn. We're most active on Instagram.
Sure.
That's where a lot of our audience is. But I'll be honest with you, there's so many bigger and better ways to grow a business than social media. And I just want to remind everyone of that today.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. Laurel, we're kind of heading towards the final stretch. I actually had an interesting thought, because I'm just curious. You know, you may have thought about this before, maybe not. But if you could go back right now to 17-year-old Laurel and maybe give two or three nuggets of wisdom advice for the future to your younger you, what would a couple of those be?
I've been walking through a lot of this. So I think it's grounded in love and forgiveness. True story, you can't physically cry while you're drinking. So, hey. So I think a lot of people can actually take something from this. And so we all make not great decisions. We all wish we could have done things differently. But when you choose not to forgive yourself and forgive others around you for the part you and them played in that downfall, it's like reliving it every day, and you will consistently call yourself unqualified to do better and be better.
Yeah.
And so I would have told myself to love myself a little bit more, and that to forgive myself because the decisions I made did not define who I was going to be.
That's good. That's a good word. I think a few people needed to hear that, Laurel. So thank you for sharing that. What a good word. As we're kind of wrapping up here, this has been a great conversation. We've talked about, we all the way from the concept of pivoting and embracing adaptation and change as it comes, to being in tune, not only externally to what's happening, but internally, and kind of that full body yes concept. I love that you taught us. And then even on the heart side, just, hey, this is real life. And in retrospect, you see a lot, but in the moment, you don't see it all. So I appreciate you sharing that. What's a final thought, Laurel? A final thought for leaders as we wrap up today's conversation you want to leave on their hearts?
As leaders, we often envision ourselves as people that wear many hats. But the reality is you wear one hat, and that one hat is you. Stop trying to put yourself into all these different boxes and embrace how every role that you serve in feeds in and makes the other role better. How being a parent makes you a better leader, how being a leader makes you a more resilient parent. All of those things, that you are one person, one hat, and everything that you do makes you the amazing, incredible leader, impactful leader that you are.
I love that. That's a good word. Hashtag Laurel Ordonez, drop the mic. Great word. Laurel, I want to just mention on behalf of Dr. Sam Chand, Martijn van Tilburg, our whole AVAIL team, We're thankful for your leadership. We're proud of you. We honor you. And we pray that the Lord will continue to open the doors for you to impact more and more leaders out there, because God's given you a heart to do so. We're proud of you.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, everybody, I hope you've been encouraged by another episode of the Avail Podcast. Thank you for joining us on this episode. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. Make sure to claim your free trial subscription of the Avail Journal if you haven't done so. It's free. A free trial subscription. We want you to check it out. You're going to be blessed by many articles, amazing contributors like Laurel Ordonez. And if you'd like to connect with us, make sure you go to theartofleadership.com. As always, I'm your Avail podcast host, Virgil Sierra. Catch you next time right here on the Avail Podcast.